like full paper, research letter also, like short perspective paper also. And it only is like 700 words or 1000 words. It's very short, like one page. At least it gives you opportunity to publish. So, and also it's a short, so not taking much time and no need to have a data, to be collected, like a research paper, which takes too long time. So short perspective paper is also on the recent things going on, like, COVID-19 situation in Indonesia, how use the telemedicine or technology to handle, or mobile app for symptom checker or tracking for COVID patients and something like that. So it's a small but nice topics too.
So it categorized to short communication type of paper.
Yeah, it will be like a short communication too. So it depends. If you have already some data and you want to have a research letter, then also possible. Then you can have a research letter with one table figure or something. So it totally depends on your convenience. And also can have review papers, not really systematic review, just like a normal Scopus, like a normal scoping review, narrative review, these kind of reviews, because the other reviews takes time too. So, I mean, a lot of opportunities, and I encourage actually, especially, and I hope from this workshop also we'll look forward to have some papers coming, because I see the 100+ participants. So it will be really great at least to have some papers coming out. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Usman and Professor Azam, we can start now.
Okay, yes. Okay.
I will, as a moderator, I will be your moderator. Wait. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning, everybody here. The Honorable Professor Usman as our speaker in this second virtual lecture of Faculty of Sport Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. And the Honorable Professor Mahalul Azam as our Vice Dean for Academic Affairs, Faculty of Sport Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang, and all audiences and students attending this lecture until more than 100. I think the number of students is still running. Well, it is an honor for me to guide remarkable guest lecture organized by Faculty of Sport Science, Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. I would like to say thank you to my colleague, Mrs. Dina, who helped us on this collaboration between TMU and UNES. Among us, Professor Usman will deliver speech about scientific writing from A to Z, and he is from College of Public Health, Taipei Medical University, Taiwan. And the topic, I think it's very interesting because sometimes as a student, as a lecturer, we meet difficulties when writing articles for thesis, for bachelor degree, for thesis for master or doctoral degree, or for article for publication in journal. Before we get started, let me read the rule for participants. Number 1, please turn on your camera and turn off your microphone, and please change your display name for the Zoom with the format name _ institution. For example, John Davis _ UNES. And number 3, please behave appropriately during the virtual lecture. And number 4, question can be asked by chat menu, or you can direct ask to Professor Usman. And do not forget to subscribe our YouTube channel, FIK and our public health. And in the end of virtual lecture, it will be informed the link of so do not leave the Zoom. And number 7, the link is active for only 60 minutes, and after this virtual 60 minutes after this virtual lecture is over. Next agenda is welcoming speech from our Vice Dean, the Honorable Associate Professor Mahalul Azam. The time is yours.
Thank you very much, Pak Lukman. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good morning, everyone. Morning, Prof. Usman. Yeah, we thank you very much for Prof. Usman Iqbal from Taipei Medical University, Taiwan, for accepting our request to become our virtual lecturer here. And yeah, we know Prof. Usman Iqbal very well known in his expert, actually in the area of public health and computer science in public health as well. And today he will deliver the scientific writing topic, and I think it's very interesting topic here. I also thank you for all lecturers that joined today, especially Bu Dina, maybe join in this lecture. Yeah, Bu Dina connect us to Prof. Usman Iqbal, and yeah, we have a lot of support from Prof. Usman Iqbal and colleagues in Taipei Medical University. One of them is in the virtual lecture, in the another activities, and we hope in other opportunity we can continue our collaboration, maybe in join scientific writing and join publication, join research, etc. We also, I think, we have experience in student exchange, right, Pak Lukman, in the Taipei Medical University. Once again, we thank you very much for all your support to our institution. We also thank you to all the participant here, student, lecturer in Indonesia, in UNES, or other student in another university, maybe from Taipei Medical University as well. Thank you very much. I think today we will get very much fruitful advantage to join this virtual lecture with the very interesting topic today. From on behalf of our faculty, we deliver the sorry from Prof. Tanya, our dean. Actually, she want to join this virtual lecture, but she have another agenda for today, so she sent her warm regard to all of us, especially from Usman Iqbal. She thank you very much once again as our institution to Prof. Usman Iqbal. I think that's all for us. We hope we can enjoy this virtual lecture and we can get the fruitful from this virtual lecture. Thank you very much, Pak Lukman. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for your warm welcome, Pak Azam. And if there is another agenda, we let you to continue your agenda, and I will guide this virtual lecture. And now we go to the main session, but let me to show you the curriculum vitae of our speakers, our lecturer in the second series of virtual lecture. Professor Usman is from College of Public Health, Taipei Medical University, Taiwan, and for her PhD from College of Medical Science and Technology, Taipei, Taiwan, and then from his master degree from College of Management, Taiwan, Taipei, and from his bachelor from Faculty of Pharmacy, Karachi, Pakistan. And professional affiliation and recognition, he got from some recognition like Australasian Institute of Digital Health, International Health Literacy Association, Royal Society of Public Health, RSPH, and Australasian College of Health Services and Management. And for his publication related with artificial intelligence, mobile application of CDM, and global burden of disease study. And after delivering the presentation, I will open the question and answer for the audiences. Please feel free to ask the question by directly or writing in the chat menu. And without further ado, I would like to welcome our lecturer in this second virtual lecture, Professor Usman. The screen is yours. Approximately 30 until 40 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mahlul Azam and Lukman, for a nice introduction. And let me share my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Thank you again, Dr. Azam and Dr. Lukman, for providing this opportunity, and Professor Dina for having this collaboration ongoing. Today we are going to talk about A to Z of scientific writing in healthcare, and I hope that you all will able to understand that how to write a paper and publish in a good journal. So I will try my best to explain you step by step. And if you still have any problem, please, you can stop me, ask me, or you can just put in the chat, or at the end, you can collect and ask me questions too. No problem at all. So you already have my introduction from Dr. Lukman, and since you know that I'm based in College of Public Health, which we have department called Global Health and Health Security Department, and I was also affiliated with several journals. The journals I was part of that is International Journal for Quality in Healthcare, which was from Oxford University Press, and then Computer Method and Program in Biomedicine, which from Elsewhere, and then BMJ in Healthcare and Informatics. So I am associate editor for all these three journals. And recently I joined as a co-editor-in-chief for Computer Method and Program in Biomedicine Update. This is a new sister journal of Computer Method and Program in Biomedicine, which has 3.6 Imperfector now. So my experience during when I was handling the journals, I learned a lot actually. Like, what kind of papers coming, what are the requirements for editors, publishers, and then, different publishers, are they working in the same way, and what the usually editors wants to have. And you can see that there are different Imperfector for journals, and whichever journal we worked, we really, work hard to improve the Imperfector as well, and by publishing more papers and securing more good impact. So this is the journal which I am co-editor-in-chief now, called Computer Methods and Program in Biomedicine. And you all are welcome to submit any papers related to this domain. Today's talk is about like how we are going to write a paper, draft a paper, and then publish. And after publish, what we should do. So the whole presentation will be in 5 sections. So first is why and how we should, prepare the manuscript. And so why we should prepare the manuscript. First of all, we need to understand there are different kind of papers. So sometimes we get confused what kind of research paper we have to write. So there is one is called original research papers, which is we usually call just research articles or research papers. And we also call original papers. Then there is another kind which is called review articles. And then there's a short communication, letter to editor, or commentary. And then research projects funding also is kind of under scientific writing, because you also have to write in a particular way. And then there is some patents, and then there is a thesis, which we write for master's or PhD program as well. So research articles usually contain original data, which we collect from the different fields. And review articles is usually a literature review on particular topic, which we select the particular duration and try to find that how many papers on particular this topic, and then we assess further the findings of those papers published. Short communication is a very short paper. I was talking to Dr. Azam, it's like, you can have a short 1 page or mostly like under 1,000 words, which is different kind of like, for example, if one paper published, you can write in response to that paper. And sometimes you just have a viewpoint on particular topic. And any recent topic ongoing, which is hot topic too. And research projects funding is a kind of generic proposal, but you also have to put the literature and the methods as well. And then patents is, if somebody has done something innovation things, then they can able to file the patent that this belongs to them. This is what their work is. So nobody else can able to steal. So scientific paper is actually written in a very well proper format. You cannot write anything randomly. So it has to be in a proper format. And it should be written in a certain way and must be published in a certain way as well. You cannot just publish, like if there is a research paper, you cannot publish any news journal or any website or upload anywhere. No, you must have to publish in a particular place, particular journal, research journal. And then it should meet the test valid publication as well. Means that you have to follow the structure of the journal and see that what journal demands. And then according to that, you have to prepare your manuscript and then submit. And it is very important that whatever work you have done should be published in a proper place. Means if your work is related to public health, then it should be published in a public health related journals. So why we should write, first of all, being students, or being researchers, we do something very innovative, right? Sometimes if we have done some research, so we feel like, we want to share something. We have something important which we would like to share with other people. And if you are a researcher or a professor, then you feel like because you want to advance yourself professionally, right? Because if you have done something, you learn a lot and then you share with other people. And of course, in a research, you also want to secure the more funding. So if you have done some research, you can able to apply for the research grants. And you want to educate people, you want to contribute to your institution, because if you publish from particular university, then university ranking will go high. And also in your field, you will be the one who have done that work. So people will know you that, oh, this person has done a lot of work in this field. And you can improve the practice as well. So because if you have find something interesting, then you can able to, change the practice or help policymakers to tell them, what they should be focusing on. And also because if you have done something, sometimes you feel satisfied because you're contributing to the society. So personal satisfaction is also one of the key factor in this. So why, it is usually we cannot able to write, because sometimes we feel, oh, we don't have time. Sometimes we feel we don't know how to write. And sometimes we feel like, oh, okay, even I start writing, from where I should start writing. And sometimes we have a bad experiences because we have a lot of rejections, criticism, and we feel very upset and bad that, we feel like, if this journal has rejected us, then we should not really, submit or do work again. But what we should do is we should really try our best to give a try, right? So what we have to do is we have to plan the strategies. It's not really complicated, if you think something you have to do it, you can able to do it. And of course, everyone gets rejected, you cannot always have everything ready, right? So you always have to try your best to find something best for you. So when you start writing, you have to answer few questions in your mind before you start writing, right? For example, you need to think about why you want to publish your work, right? So this is very important. So first of all, for example, you have to see that the topic you are thinking of, is it new and interesting? It's not very old, because if it is very old topic and nobody's interested, then maybe the editors will not be happy to have these kind of papers too, because everybody wants to have a new updated information. So for example, like nowadays people are talking about COVID-19. So if you will work on COVID-19, then it's important. But if you will talk about something which is very, very old, then nobody wants to have that kind of research. So you have to make sure, is it current and hot topic? And also you have to make sure that the research you are doing, you are not only trying to find out the problem, but you also have some solution for that, right? According to your best knowledge. And when you have all this information, then you can decide, are you ready to publish now? And if you have all these questions answered as yes, then it means that, you can start working on your manuscript preparation. So scientific article must answer the following basic questions, actually. First of all, what is the problem that you want to address, right? And why it is important? And how did you study the problem? And what are your results? And what are the implications of the results? And what do you recommend as further study for other people, So this is very important. So whenever you start writing the paper, every paper almost have the similar structure, the 4 main parts, actually, no matter what kind of paper you are working on. First is introduction. What introduction means, means the thing you are going to do is, what is this about? And then methods. So what did you do, right? So that is a method, like how did you do and what did you do and that stuff. And then what did you find? What did you find is your results. And what does that mean? Means is a discussion, actually. So when you're preparing your paper, you have to make sure that you're trying to tell kind of a story. So you should have a beginning, you should have a middle part, then you should have an end. So introduction, body, and conclusion. And you have to make sure it should be easy to read and easy to understand as well. So writing style is also very important, So an article should be understood by the readers, because whatever you are trying to write, it should be understood by the people, like in a simple language. Don't use very extraordinary, some kind of vocabulary which people are not aware of. And avoid the jargons and be precise and be active, not passive, right? So it means this is what we have done, right? This is what we have done. This is kind of like active, and short words, and also short sentences and plural sentences. Not like I have done this, I have done this. No, plural means we have done this. The reason is because if you say we, it shows like a teamwork, because sometimes you have people who are involved, like 2 or 3 people or 4 people or 5, it depends. So that's why it is very important. The things you should avoid is also, not about the gender, like, female, male, like, I'm male, I'm female, not like this. So you should be very gender neutral as well when you are writing. So that's why we suggest to use we and, something like that. When you're writing something, you also have to keep in mind that you are writing for international readers, right? Because not only for the people who are in particular area, but also the people who are in other countries. And if you are using any abbreviations, you need to explain that abbreviations as well. And you can remove as many of these as possible out of your paper as well. Not too many of these important there. So the 3 C's are very important when you're writing your paper: clarity, conciseness, and correctness. And it has to be very brief and specific. And you try to make sure that you should keep the important information and just still stay as a brief, not too much in writing, like unnecessary writing. Then you also need to understand your enemy. Who is your enemy? Your enemy in writing the paper is repetition. Means don't write the same thing again and again and again in the introduction. And also redundancy, right? Ambiguity, and so much exaggeration as well. Like you are trying to say, oh, I did this experiment, oh, it has this frustration problem, this instrument got blocked and something. No, you have to be very clear and polite. So they are common anonymous for editors as well, because if you have so much thing again and again written, like the same thing you have written in the first paragraph and the second paragraph, then the editor will feel, this is just repetition. There is nothing new important. And also it will not attract the reader's, attention as well. So overall, the paper actually have this kind of component structure. It has a title, authors, abstract, keyword, introduction, method, results, discussion, acknowledgement, references, and appendices. So as I mentioned, your paper has actually the main four structure, the main body, and other are the small extra parts with that paper. So title is very important. It has to be very clearly describes the content, and authors, you also have to make sure that your authors are having the correct names and correct placements, like 1, 2, 3. And abstract, your abstract usually we suggest to keep under 150 to within the 250 words, not too long, because some journals have some limitations for the abstract too. Keywords, you also have to ensure that the keywords you are using is the common keywords that people can easily able to find out your research. Introduction, it usually explains the problem. So you try to explain the problem with the previous literature published. Methods is like how you collected the data. So method has to be very clear too. I will mention it in the next slides. Results means like what you want to describe, what you discovered. And then discussion is like when you find the results, how you're going to have this, the findings implications as well for the future. And acknowledgements are like, you want to ensure people who help you in the research. And then references, you also have to ensure that the references are from the published literature. And then is recognized. And appendices usually means if the journal asks you to only provide 3 or 2 figures or tables, and if you have extra information, extra table, extra figures, you can actually provide as a supplementary file, like an extra additional file to the participant editors. So title, first of all, the titles, right? So title is actually considered as the backbone of the article. Why we say backbone of the article? Because the good title contains good attention, and it should be very short and precise as well. So when you have a title, you try to do is, to see that your main message is indicated in the title. And also it should be very specific, concise, and complete, and it should attract the readers. You don't have to write the whole paragraph as title, which is very annoying, because then the title is not really like a title. Title has to be very precise, like a, like a news heading kind of title, which catches attention. For example, if you want to write about some particular paper and you want to see if this drug has some effect on particular thing, or, so like COVID vaccine has something impact. So you say, is this really helpful? And then question mark, something like that, means it will attract the people's attention that, oh, is it that helpful? We don't know. So we should read the paper, So this is how. And what we should avoid is unnecessary jargon and uncommon abbreviation, which we don't know, because sometimes there are so many abbreviations are common and we don't know what this abbreviation is for what. And ambiguous terms and unnecessary detail, which is not relevant to this, and then we are just still having there, we don't need that. And focus on the content only. So that is very important, that whatever you have is you just focus on the contents, main contents. So for example, the title example, this one is, you see it's very long title and it looks like a full sentence, like a whole results are here, right? So you should avoid this kind of title, and you should have something a little bit more precise like this way. So see, there is a much difference in these titles. When it comes to the abstracts, then you have to keep in mind that the abstract should have a strong value, it influence on editors' decision. Whenever you submit a paper, the editors usually look at your title and abstract first. So abstract should be very crispy, because then, you should have it's like a summary of your whole study, research study, right? So it should be precise and honest. It should be crispy, concise, and accurate. Don't put unnecessary extra information, just put the concise information. And if somebody read your abstract, can able to understand your whole research, you should write in this way. And shouldn't use any technical jargon. And it should be very brief and specific. And please don't cite the references in the abstract, right? So your abstract should be like you are trying to sell your article, your research, so it should stand alone. So
Sorry, Professor, you are still unmute. Okay.
Okay. So there is the structure of the abstract is we usually suggest the less than 250 words is appropriate. And then the structure of the abstract should have purpose, like reason, a 1 or 2 line, what is a problem statement or background. Then should have a design, like methodology, how it was done and scope of the study. Then findings, your results and discussion. And then research implications, limitations, and practical implications or social implications or originality of the value and the conclusion. So then keywords is also very important. So, the keywords are why important? Because it helps to index the paper in the databases. So traditional journals usually ask you to provide 5 to 10 keywords. And, it should be like in alphabetic order. And keywords should be very specific. Avoid uncommon abbreviations that I mentioned and general terms, and try to use the mesh terms, which is very important. Because nowadays, most of the journals, they use the mesh terms. So here, when we start writing the introduction, we need to understand that, we should not write unnecessary information in the introduction. It should be very precise and comprehensive, maybe 1 to 2 paragraphs maximum. Less than 1 page, we should try our best. So just provide the necessary background information, and also why the current work was performed, because maybe some not latest research has been done, or if there is done, maybe they use a different experiment, and aims and significance of that, like what has been done before and what was done in your research in brief terms, like what you are trying to do and what was achieved in brief terms. But you don't have to write the results. So make sure just writing like, okay, I am in this study, we are going to do this new method, blah, 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 stuff like that. And in introduction, you also have to keep in mind that you should consult the author guidelines of the journal you are going to submit. Because if you don't know how many words the journal needed, then if you wrote a too long introduction, but then you don't have enough space for writing other parts of the paper. So make sure you need to understand how much is the total paper needed, maybe 3,000 words, then you divide your sections according to that, right? So you set the scene when you're writing the introduction and outline the problem and hypothesis, and ensure that your literature is balanced cited. Means not too much from relevant. And also if you have done a lot of your own research related to that topic, because of course you are also a researcher, then try to be a balance in that way too. And define if you are using any abbreviations, because sometimes we have very long terminologies and we don't want to use them again and again to avoid the unnecessary words. So what we can do is we can use the abbreviation in the first beginning with the full full abbreviation, and then in the next upcoming places we can just use the abbreviations. So it means you already have defined those particular abbreviations in the introduction section. What you should not do in the introduction, as I mentioned, that don't write too much, cite and don't cite too much work of your friends or your own if it's not appropriate, only the relevant. And also don't describe the method, results, or conclusion in your introduction. And don't use terms like novel or for the first time, because you never know. Maybe someone has done some research but never published, or maybe published but you did not have able to access to that particular information. So that is very important, that you have to be very clear and don't overestimate. Then method is very important as well. So method for the abstract, and for the in the main manuscript too. You need to have a standard sequence of method. For example, you need to start with study design, and when your study was conducted, and the description of your participants, intervention, patient description, and what are the outcomes you were trying to find out, like primary endpoints or secondary endpoints. And then you have a like which kind of statistical method or software you have used, whether you have got the IRB approval for this one, or if you were collecting the surveys, did you get the consent from the participants or their other, their parents, and if the participants are underage. And then your method should be clear, that if somebody wants to do the study, similar study, they can able to understand the method and able to reproduce that. So, but not exactly each and single detail you don't need to explain in the method as well. What I'm trying to say here is that you have to be just precise, comprehensive. If somebody's interested in more detail, they can also ask you. So don't provide each and every single step as well. The results is actually the main findings of the research. So what you should do in the results section is describe the participants, like the basic, what are the sample, and you should exclude some, what you have excluded from the data. For example, if you recruit some 100 people and some people may not want to continue the study later, then you mention clearly. And then primary outcomes, and also if there is any outcomes, and try to use figures and tables more to represent your results instead of writing too much text. So avoid text and use more figures and tables in the results section. And always compare like with like, and try to use the pictorial diagrams. And what you should avoid is don't interpret the results. Interpret means don't discuss the results. Just say that, oh, we found this one, but you don't have to say why we found this one, because that is the next section, which is called discussion. And if you are having the tables data in the table, and the same data or same point, you don't have to mention in the figure. So it has to be different. Don't repeat the same data in different formats like tables or figures. And use if you're using the graphs or something, you also mention in the text. If you mention the text, then you don't have to mention in the figures or tables. But if you have figures or tables, then you don't have to write about that in the text. In discussion section, you have to describe that the results you have found, that how these are related to your hypothesis, the hypothesis you were testing, what you can relate, and try to find the studies which can support your hypothesis or your findings, or which are contradict to your results. And then you can have some implications or possible practical applications. And you can also mention about the limitation of the studies, because of course there are some limitation of the studies all the time as well, that we don't have everything perfect. Limitation of the study does not mean that your study is not enough valued, but you also have to express that, how you overcome these limitations as well. Sometimes we have resource limitations, sometimes we have some other kind of, issues. Future research directions is also very important, because once you start finishing up the discussion, you also have to mention that what was lacking in your research study, and what you are suggesting for the future, whoever wants to do similar study should be keeping in mind when doing something similar. What you should be avoid while writing discussion is making grand statements like which are not supported by this particular, your findings. And example is like, this is a novel treatment, because you don't know this is novel or not. This is according to your statement, but because maybe there are some other researches which we don't have access, and they also have found something interesting. Next is conclusion, which is very important, because you have to conclude, but you have to conclude in a very precise way, like in 2 to 3 lines, or maximum 4 to 5 lines. What you should do is put your study into context, means what is the overall conclusion in 2 or 3 lines? What is your main, identification, the key findings, and how these findings are applicable, for what you want to do, and describe how it represents an advancement in the field. And if you have any suggestions for future experiments, you should suggest that too. And what you should avoid is that repetition with other sections. Like if you have done something already before, don't write the same. Like sometimes people just copy the discussion one section, one paragraph, and put in the conclusion. No, because you already write something, so write a conclusion different part. And don't over speculate, as I already mentioned, that don't say novel or this thing. Just be humble, and don't overemphasize on the impact of your study as well. So then comes to acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is also very important because there are so many people who help you. Sometimes some people help you in writing, some people help you in language editing, sometimes people just give you comments, technical help, sometimes people provide some human resource. So you can acknowledge them, and sometimes there are some fundings for particular research projects. And acknowledged sources of funding, and including any grants or references as well. This all should come in the acknowledgement section, which is at the end of the paper. Then is the references, and the references are also very important. When you are citing a references, try to use some software like EndNote, or people some use the Mendeley, and try to cite the current literature. And the key literature, not just random literature. You have to see that, how this study is related to my paper. And the reference citation must be accurate and complete. Don't cite the half, because we don't know, there are so many papers published. So always try to cite the full accurate reference, and correct style according to the journal. So if you are using EndNote or other bibliometric library software, it will help you to automatically update the different style if you're using this one. So you don't have to go one by one references. You can, when you're using this software, just one click to the different style, it will help to change the whole manuscript references style. What you should avoid in the references is personal communications or unpublished observations, because you don't know if the research is not published, or somebody just said, you cannot trust on them, because you don't know if it is going to be. So if you don't have any evidence, only the published research has an evidence because it's published. And if somebody is doing no matter how good experiments, but if it's not published, you cannot rely on that. Also, citing articles which are in local language. This is also a problem, because local language is also kind of hard for other people to understand. So that's why I try to avoid that too. And excessive self-citation, as I mentioned before, that if you are a researcher or a professor and you already have some research papers, or even student, and if you publish and you want to cite all your papers in that paper, it's not a good practice. So try to avoid the self-citation as well. Supplementary material, as I mentioned in the beginning, that a supplementary material is the material which you have extra information you want to share with editor. That's why you want to provide as a supplementary. And this is usually available only online. So you don't have a problem, because sometimes the journal will ask you to only provide 5 tables or figures in total. So, but you have maybe 7 tables or figures. The other 2 tables or figures you can provide as a supplementary material. So journal will not have any problem as much supplementary material you want to provide. It's up to you. Tables and figures is very important in the research paper. So whenever you have when you're writing, you have to make sure that your tables presents the list of numbers and text in columns proper. And the figures should be, very neat and clean and clearly showing the results and numbers. And also the captions means, if you have a table, you should have a title for that table, that what is this table about. If you have a figure, you should have a title for the figure. What is that figure about? So that people will understand, because the editors or the reviewers, they don't understand your tables of figure because they were not involved in your research. So they only can able to see the title, and then they can able to understand from the title that what is this research about. Guidelines for tables, for figures and tables is, you should have a high resolution, neat and clean, as I mentioned, should be simple, clearly formatted. And if there are any problem of error, then you should specify clearly, and you should have a very clear details on that. Ethics is very important in scientific writing as well. So for example, if you found something, don't manipulate the data. Whatever findings you have, just present it as it is, because sometimes people, what they say is, they want to make a significant, they try to move a little bit around and to see that how it can be significant. So try to avoid that. This is not a good practice. Be factual, honorable, be legal, truthful, objective, and accurate. And so don't falsify the data or fabricate the data or plagiarize also, because if you are copy pasting from someone, or if you feel like, this person has done a good research, try to cite them. And if you want to take as it is sentence, and then you just put in the inverted commas. And sometimes people working in a co-working space, same labs or same area, and they see the other people's experiment, and sometimes they try to take that too. This is also not a good practice, so you should avoid that. Then another issues comes in scientific writing is about the authorship issues, like who should be the first author, second author, third author. This is also very important, which you have to resolve among your team members when whoever is working on the literature, the paper, and the whole study idea and everything. So you have to divide accordingly. And if you are collecting the data, you need to understand that there is an IRB nowadays. Journal asks for the ethical approval, and acknowledge if there are any contributors who have done this. And if this is a clinical trial, you need to register. And if there is any research grants, then you have to acknowledge that, and avoid any duplicate publications. Because if you have done the research already, and you publish that data already, then don't try to use the same data to publish another paper. Okay, because this is also not a good practice. So what is plagiarism? So plagiarism is actually the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as your own. So if you're taking somebody else's work and you're saying that, oh, this is your own work. No, so try to avoid that. This is not a good practice, because if somebody found you, then you will have a serious consequences about that. First of all, the editors, what they usually do is they just reject the paper because they don't have enough time to follow up and, to think about everything. So they just avoid and just reject. Second could be the academic charges. And if you're, working as a researcher or academician, then you could have a termination of employment, and it will have a serious effect on your scientific reputation. What is conflict of interest? This is also common, because when you mention about the authors, in the paper, you need to understand that whoever participated in the work, you already discussed with them before submitting the paper. Because nowadays the journal will send email to all the authors and asking, are you aware of this paper, this work? Are you happy with the co-author? So you have to accept or reject, that invitation. So sometimes people don't tell their colleagues, and they just submit by themselves, and they just put the authors as they want, which is not a good practice too, because some authors, if they claim, then you will have trouble, then your paper will not be going anywhere, right? So how you should manage is, you cannot ignore, of course, right? So you have to discuss, and you cannot even avoid that too, right? Because it's hard, and also, if you disclose to editor, author, or reader, it also depends, how you want to, because you don't want to destroy your reputation too. So that was so far like how, when you're writing a paper, how you should prepare your manuscript. Now in section 2, we will discuss like how you can find a suitable journal for your paper when you already have the manuscript ready. So select the best journal for submission. How usually people select the journals? They select the journals. First, you can see the references of your work, because you also cited some references. So you can able to see that in which journals that particular paper is published. That is the first thing you can see. Second, you can review the recent papers in each candidate journal, right? You can see that what kind of papers they publish. And then you can see that, what kind of people will read this journal. And then, what is the impact factor of the journal, because impact factor is also very important for certain people, for certain organizations. They focus on the impact factor. And you can also see that how long this paper, this journal will take to review the paper, because sometimes if the journal is taking too long, then it is too hectic for us. Because, I also have personal experience, even being author. When I submit, the journal took 1 year just to review the paper, one paper, and after it was from public health, and after 1 year they just reject with very simple comments, which we can able to address, but because they just want to reject it, so there is no other way. Also, you have to see that if this is open access or free journal. Open access means whether you have to pay the fees, and open access is also important because in some countries we don't have subscription and to particular journals, and then you have to pay the money to download the paper or to see the full paper. But open access journals are having the free available text available, which you can able to do that, so, to see the paper or download. So decide on the journal. One thing you have to keep in mind is don't submit to multiple journals at the same time. Okay, so you have to submit to one journal in one time. So open access journals are, as I mentioned, you have to look for further details like what is open access journals. They usually, the articles are freely accessible on the different repositories and different databases, and different the universities have different subscriptions on that too. So you have a different kind of open access journals options. Some journals are very fast. Sometimes if you have research journal, you can able to pay for that fees for that open access journal. Some journals will take some time, so it depends. And impact factor is also one of the important key factor, as I mentioned. And impact factor journals are the one who have high frequency of citations, right? That's why the impact factor is high. And why we try to follow the impact factor journal is because we feel like, because most people read these journals, that's why it's a good quality journals. And how the impact factor usually calculated. So I just want to share, like, for example, if the people want to see the impact factor of 2021, they see the previous 2 years paper published, how many times they get cited in 2021. So the papers published in 2019 and 2020. For example, there are 150 papers published in 2019 and 150 papers published in 2020. And how many times these 2 years papers cited in 2021, that is the impact factor. So you can see, this is a formula, simple way. Then H index or Hirsch index is also, the number of more citations for particular papers. That is called H index number. It's not very much important for you guys at this moment. So when we talk about why it is important to publish in high impact factor journals, because you want to get more attention, greater visibility to your research, increase the chances of more citations, and you want to tell people, you have published in a very good impact factor journal. And there are so many benefits affiliated with that, because if you publish in a good impact factor journal, sometimes you get some awards from the universities and other. So what usually the journal editors and reviewers want from the paper when submitted? They think, first of all, when the paper submitted, they check that if the manuscript is a novel according to the new hot topics, and is it good for the audience for their particular journal. And if this is balanced, then they usually go through further. And journals do not want, they usually only care about the quality, right? So they don't want duplication. If somebody has done already one research paper published on that topic, then if someone else is trying to do the same, unless you have different methods, they will, not really interested in that. So you have to keep in mind your paper is original, it is significant advances in the field, it is a very well designed study, it can be easy to read, and it meets the ethical standards. If your work is out of date, and if it is insufficient data and not follow the journal guidelines, and does not have the scientific interest, then the editors or reviewers will not be happy with that. So if you have all these things, like attention to the details, check and double check your work, and consider the reviewers, and English must be good as possible. Presentation is very important, and you should take your time to revise the paper, acknowledge whoever helped you, and new, original, and previously unpublished paper, and critically evaluate your own paper, and ethical rules must be obeyed. Then it will lead you towards acceptance if you follow all these steps. In section 3, we are going to discuss like what things to be checked before submission. So when you prepare your manuscript, you have to keep in mind that it's new and original. Manuscript have checked by all the listed authors that I mentioned before. Copyright permission, because if you're using tables or figures from other published literature, then you have to get a permission. Proper affiliation and acknowledgement should be there. This is a quick checklist before submission. So you should, you need to see, because sometimes journals have different categories, so you have to pick the specific category, and you have to see that you follow the journal guidelines, and you have a particular, as they mentioned for the author guidelines, you have the correct files, correct publication, and all the information is correct, tables, figures, and everything, including the word limit, which is very important, because if the journal asks you 3,000 words and you're submitting 4,000 words, editor don't want to take time to ask you to revise, because they don't have enough time to ask individual people. So you have to keep in mind before. And also you have to see if your references are complete, you are using the international standard, because don't use the local languages or comments or standards. And also for figures or tables, I mentioned you have to get permission and check the spellings and names as well. So author contribution is very important, as I mentioned before. Is somebody saying something? Okay. So author should be based on. So conception and design of analysis or interpretation is very important, and you should draft the article or revise it critically, and don't take it very light, because if somebody is giving you comments, please revise that carefully, and also have a final approval of the version to be published. Cover letters is very important when you're submitting the paper. So you should make sure that your cover letter contains some good information for editors. Your cover letter should not be like this, which you just say 2 lines, dear editor, please find this. Your cover letter should be proper, which you address personally to the editor with if you know the editor name and the journal name, and title of your paper, and brief about your background, rational description of your results, and explain the importance of the findings, and provide the corresponding author details as well. So cover letter should have this information, what was done, what is significance, and what is the interest to the journal readers, and confirm the originality of the submission as well, and confirm that there are no competing interests, or so the cover letter should be look like this. You can see here there is a first from who, and title of the paper, and to editor, which journal. The first paragraph is saying background of the research and findings, and the second paragraph is about what was done and what was found that will be interested to the journal readers. And the third is mentioning that if this paper is follow the journal guidelines and ethical approval, and then corresponding author details. So when you are recommending the reviewers, you have to keep in mind that who are these experts. As much as possible, you need to read before and know your competitors as well, of course, because when you're working on particular things, then you have some competitors as well. So when you are recommending the reviewers, you need to remove your friends from that list, because even you recommend the reviewers, editor will know that, because they can able to search about that particular people, and they can see that, you recommended whom, and if they have done that work or not. And even you recommend the reviewers, then the final decision is ultimate to the editor, whether they want to invite those or not, because they also understand this conflict of interest situations as well. So Section 4 is how the journals usually process your paper, So it's not like a black hole. And when you submit the paper, the paper will go to the author. When they submit the paper, they can able to okay, sorry. So I was just checking the chat box. So when you're submitting the paper, it will go to editor for basic requirements check, and then editor will see whether your paper is of interest to the journal, or whether they should send for a review or not. If the editor think is enough interest, they will say yes, and they will assign the reviewers, and then they will send out to the reviewers. But if your paper is not enough, maybe not follow the requirements or not enough interest, they will just reject. And when they reject, it will go back to the author. But if they assign the reviewers, sometimes after reviewers feedback, it will come back to editor again. And then editor will look at the reviewer comments and see that what reviewers are happy with that, or they suggest a minor or major revision. Or if the reviewers think that this is not the good, because then you have to keep in mind that this is not totally depend on the reviewer comments, because editor will also look at the reviewer comments. Sometimes even the reviewer comments are not very good, but the editor will be happy with the paper and they will send out to the authors to revise. But sometimes the editor also think that, oh, this is not the good, the comments, and this paper must be rejected because this paper need a lot of rewriting or work. Then they reject that paper, and then with the comments, and then it go back to the author. But if the editor think that the reviewers can revise, the authors can revise this paper according to reviewer comments, then what will happen is they will just send the paper to ask authors to revise the paper as major or minor revision according to the comments. And then author should take time to revise your paper and then submit back to editor, and then editor will assign to the reviewers again for the final feedback again. So sometimes the editor, when they're assigning, they will assign to the same reviewers, or sometimes they can assign to the new reviewers too. It depends on the paper category as well. So reviewers, it's very common to say that nobody else read your paper more than reviewers. So reviewers are the one who read your paper really in depth, in detail. So you have to keep in mind, and it's like you are running from those people from the middle, and everybody is trying to stop you. So exciting the reviewer's mind is very important, right? So you have to keep in mind that your work and the way you are trying to address the comments to the reviewers should be helpful. And it is likely that no one will ever read your paper more than reviewers, as I mentioned, that because the reviewers are the one who read in depth. And when you're suggesting the reviewers, it's also sometimes become political as well. So what is the problem with the reviewers? Usually the reviewers, because the voluntary work, it can be slow. Sometimes it's a conflicting views, because if you invited 2 reviewers, one maybe will say, oh, please accept, this is good paper, blah, blah, blah. But maybe the second reviewer is not happy, because they are human beings, right? They have different evaluation too. But as I mentioned, the ultimate decision is by the editor. Sometimes the reviewers can give you the the personal feedback as well, but you don't have to take it personal. And also they are very careful about the data manipulation as well. If you get a revision for your paper, it's a good news. So you are now in a publishing cycle. Means editors is happy and reviewers are happy with your work. So means you should try to don't panic, try to take your time and revise it. And even the comments are discouraging, but you don't have to take it personal, because these comments are not for you. These comments are for the work which is done, right? So you have to be taking it positive way. So how to revise your case? Acknowledge the editor, set the revision deadline and don't miss the deadline. And if you disagree, explain why you think that these comments, you are disagree with these comments, because you cannot accept, of course, every comment from reviewers. Sometimes you have your own feedback as well. Clarify understanding if in doubt, and that is what you want to understand. Consult with the colleagues or co-authors or whoever were part of the work, that when you're addressing the comments, discuss with them that how you should answer, meet the revision deadline, and attach a cover letter which identifies point by point, to address the request, like what are the comments and stuff. If you got rejected, then don't give up. Okay, everybody has a rejected at least once, right? Even myself, I'm editor as well, and I'm author too. I got rejected several times, sometimes more than 20 times from the journal. And it does not mean that your paper is not good or your study is not good. It's just because sometimes the journals don't have enough space to accept all kind of papers, right? So you have to understand this situation as well. So ask why and listen carefully. If you have comments, then revise. Try to revise your the work accordingly. Sorry, and most editors will give you detailed comments about the rejected case. So don't worry and try again. Try to improve and try to resubmit. But before resubmitting, try to improve it according to the comments. And what is the positive outcome of the rejection? The positive outcome of the rejection is because you can improve the work, your valuable feedback, and good experience of how the system usually works, right? Because you will able to understand, okay, how those usually, when you submit, what you will get. And if you get accepted, then it's congratulations to you. Now you can follow, after your hard work, you got at least, usually paper is accepted after one revision or, in some cases 2 times. So you don't have, you can celebrate, of course, but what else you have to do is that you have to do the proofreading after acceptance too, to make sure that your names and affiliations are correct, or any other questions after acceptance too. So usually journal will send you proofreading in short time, like 1 to 2 weeks. It depends journal to journal. So you need to make sure all authors should be, the names are correct when you are revising, and also you are consulting with other authors, and you have to check carefully everything, your name and affiliation. The reason why I mentioned this one is I saw so many times that people, they don't care about their name because they are so much excited, and their name spellings are wrong or their affiliation is wrong. And when the paper is published after, then they cannot correct it. You cannot change once it's online. So you have to be very careful before, because proofreading is a step where you can double check after acceptance of your work. Do that. The last section is, the why and how promotion of your paper is important. Because once you publish, then you also have to keep in mind that you should promote your work. Why you want to promote your work is because you want to support the educators, and you want to train globally people. You want to raise your profile, and you want to attract more funding or more collaborations and new opportunities, right? And how you can promote. Nowadays, there is a social media like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, you can use that one. And you can use your network, if you have joined different groups where you can send your paper, press releases, or other emails, your colleagues. And you can contact the authors in your reference list as well. And you can hone your skills with the brand image as well. And or maybe you can ask publisher to provide you with the publisher leaflet, because sometimes when they have the paper published, they also have some kind of advertisement leaflets which has your paper title on that too, like a last issue or something. So at the end, I would like to share that this is the journal I mentioned. We are nowadays looking for more papers, and you all are encouraged to submit the papers. We have 2 special issues going on. One is on digital health literacy, and you can see that there are prestigious guest editors from different regions on health literacy, innovation, and technology. And if you are interested in submitting regular papers also, and we also have some paper published. If you can see here, one of our students just published recently, can digital vaccine passport potentially bring life back to normal? Budi is our global health department student from Indonesia as well. So this is all for my talk, and I'm now open for the questions and comments.
Thank you very much for your informative and interesting lecture, Professor. I think the topic will make us to ask some questions. Very well, students. Now we come to question and answer session, and there will be 2 or 3 questions. Please mention your name and institution, or I will open from the chat menu. The question is from Mrs. Katila from UNES. How if we have a quiet long paper, especially for qualitative research, and usually the words limitation is about 3,000 until 6,000 words. Could we create 2 papers from that condition, or we only have 1 paper and only write the most important findings? Professor.
Thank you. It's a very nice question. Because if your data is about 1 study, and then you just have to write 1 paper, and you cannot write too long because it depends on the journal. If journal have a limitation of 4,000 words or 3,500 words, then you have to make sure that you fit best into that guidelines. So try to reduce your introduction. Don't need to write too much introduction, your method as well, and your results and findings. There are so many people who have done the research trial. You can imagine that there are some trials for 10 years or 5-year study, right? Like a big clinical trials. But their paper is very short, just 3 pages paper they publish, right? With the for certain. So you need to express further more, like how you can provide maximum information in a very short way. Nowadays, people don't have enough time to read 10 pages or 15 pages or stuff, right? So you have to be very, very precise and careful when you're drafting a paper. Try to revise and carefully, because introduction, sometimes I saw just yesterday was an example that people, they have introduction and then they have a related work. There are 2 sections, and these 2 sections only took 4 pages. And then the discussion was only very little. So introduction and related work is actually same thing, right? So why not just make it more brief to keep it in one and only cite the relevant content. So if your data is too much and you think it's 2 different directions, then you can make 2 papers. But if you are trying, for example, like sometimes you're collecting a data information, but you have like 2 different perspectives from the same information. One is on particular tool and one is something different. Then you can able to make 2 papers. But if it's one, then you just focus on the particular 1 paper and try to keep all the information in one and try to make it more precise and follow the journal guidelines.
Okay. Another questions from students? Have you have question? Next question from, in the chat menu from Anissa from UNES. How about a research article with a topic that is not something new, because the research imitates the concept of previous research, but the researcher has the opinion that his research is kind of something new research in that place?
So if the research topic is not new, but the concept, is sometimes we update our information, right? Because, for example, like there are so many things that are same, but we use a new methods or new way of tools, right, for evaluation. So in that case, it's fine, but because you cannot change totally, right? There are sometimes, but if somebody has done exactly same thing and you are trying to do the exactly same thing here, this is not good practice. So try to avoid the exact same things. Exact same thing means exact experiment, exact tool, exact survey, and this person. In some cases, it's fine. For example, if someone has done study in UK using one questionnaire, and now you want to use in different country, and then different country, of course, the different population, right? But you want to just assess that this survey, this population, and this survey, and how, you know, the similar survey, but different population, what will be the impact, then is fine. But if you're trying to do the same experiment in certain cases, then it's not really a good practice, because then it's not adding anything new. So if you have a same survey but different country population, then you can able to add, like you say, oh, okay, you know, see, this population from, you know, this particular country, people's perception is like this about that, but in this country also have the similar perception, or maybe different perception, right? So that's how it will be helpful. But if you are doing exactly same, like someone has done already study in Indonesia on particular topic, and you are using the same questionnaire and doing the same thing, then it's not helpful at all, because somebody has already done on the same population and same thing. Then even you are doing after 2 years, it's not adding any impact on that.
Okay, thank you. Another questions from students? Please unmute your microphone. Is there any questions? Oh, no. Oh, from my questions, Professor.
Yeah.
Sometime in the result we display the table to show the statistical data, and sometimes on the table we show many variables, so complicated data. My question is, should we explain all the variables or only a particular variable?
It's a very good question as well, because when we have a very big table, a lot of variables, and if we try to explain every variable in the paper, it will be very hard, and it will take a lot of space and number of words. So what we suggest as editor or reviewer is that just pick the important variables, then just discuss that important variables in the paper. So you avoid the unnecessary, again, explaining the whole detail, and also keeping the word limit in a short. So, and also keeping the people's interest. So for example, if you have 15 variables, maybe you only pick 2 or 3 which is important, and you mention about that, and relate all information is already in the table. So you don't have to explain every single detail in depth, because the table itself is showing that this is the information you already have when you analyzed the research. So that's why we encourage tables and figures, that to avoid unnecessary writing, extra writing, that so you can use. And instead of that, it will be helpful to discuss maybe some important variable information later in the discussion as well, if there are any important findings.
Okay. Next questions from students, you can ask by open your microphone. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mamlu Atul.
Yes. Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Lukman, for the time. For the first, my name is Mamlu Atul. I want to ask about keyword. So, as I know,
keyword. Sorry,
keyword.
Oh,
yes.
Keyword. Okay.
Yes, keyword. Okay, keyword is one thing that should be prepared well, because it will make easier for our readers to find our research. But sir, can you give us tips about how to choose the best word to include in our keyword, or are we should include our title in our research, or how, sir? Thank you.
Yeah, it's also a very good question. So the keywords are very important for your research to be indexed in the different databases, right? And whenever you are choosing a keyword, try to use the mesh terms as well. And if you don't know what is a mesh terms are on the PubMed, a database. There is on the side corner, left, I think, or right side, where you can search mesh terms. So mesh terms are defined dictionary terms in that indexed, in that particular library database index. So for example, if your research is on cancer, right? But cancer has so many alternate terms as well, like oncogenesis, carcinogenesis, cancer, right? Melanoma, something like that. So when you put your cancer one term as a mesh term in that one and search what are the other mesh terms, then you can able to find out what are the related terms, right? So that's how try to figure out the best term for your keywords. And also don't use a very long keywords. Like people sometimes use the full sentences of 4 or 5 words and make it as a one keyword. That is also not a good practice. So try to use the short keywords, right? Like healthcare, like cancer, or other small like words this way. And then it will help your research to be indexed well, and then also use mesh terms. And the maximum keywords, the minimum should be 3 and maximum should be 5. And don't provide more than 5 as well, because then so many keywords is also a problem, right? Because if you have like 15 keywords or 20 keywords, then it is hard to understand where your paper is best fit. So you have to find best fit 5 keywords, right? So for example, if your whole research is focused on cancer, the cancer is your first keyword, right? And if your whole research is focused on COVID-19, that is your keyword, right? Or digital health, and then this is your keyword, right? So this is how you add into that. Or if your research is about the elderly population, then your keyword should be elderly, right? Not elderly population, just elderly, right? Because if you write the long sentences, then it will be hard for the data, because the database is also like a structure from the electronic internet, right? So this is also based on the AI or the domain or the human created the keywords, right? So it cannot judge the whole sentences. It is hard. So the short keywords and precise is more important and suggested.
Okay, any additional question, Mamlu Atun, or enough?
I want to make it clear, sir, if in our research is about pneumonia in children under 5. So the term that should be included in our keyword is only about pneumonia. Is that right, sir?
No. So pneumonia is one, child is second, right? And because, for example, if you just say pneumonia, then pneumonia is in elderly population, pneumonia is in so many, right? So you will miss the main thing because your focus is on child, right? And pneumonia. So these two things are very important, right? So the rest things later. So if you keep these two terms separate, like child, pneumonia, so whoever will search for child, your paper will come up. Whoever will search for pneumonia, your paper will come up. Whoever will search for child and pneumonia, your paper will be on the top, right? So this is how it works.
Professor Usman, is it possible if we add in the keyword with the study design, like cross-sectional case control in that keyword? Is it possible, or?
Yes, it's possible. And in some cases, people do that. But it's like, for example, if you have a space for keywords and there is no other keyword, then you can add there like cross-sectional, case control or cohort study. Because sometimes if people, they are doing a review study, they are also interested to see what are the study designs, right? Because some review papers only need cohort studies, some maybe review papers only care about the case control, some only clinical trials, right? So if you have the study design in the keyword, then whenever somebody is searching case control, pneumonia, child, right? So they will automatically, your study will pop up.
Okay. The next question from Dr. Sri. When writing the manuscript, which most important part to make accepted on methods or novelty from that research? Professor, you still mute.
Sorry, yeah. So there's no one particular section for the whole paper, because the paper is totally actually divided into 4 sections. I mentioned introduction, matter, results, and discussion. Your whole paper should be like a story. If somebody is reading your paper, can able to understand where you started and where you're ending, and you started with something, but you're also giving them something back, right, with the feedback. So introduction should be very precise, as I mentioned, don't repeat or something. And in your method section should be very solid, means you should provide a very clear detail. What is the study design, when you conducted, how many participants, which study method you use for that, and what's analysis softwares and stuff. And then you have your results should be very precise as well, and are very clearly formatted, like tables or figures, right? If you have already presented data in the table of figures, then you don't need to write that's the same thing in the text as well, right? And also the discussion section, you should have a very like a good discussion in the light of the current literature published, right, related to your paper. So you can try to find that which are the studies who support your hypothesis, or which are the studies which are not like having the consistent results with your studies. So the people will able to understand, and researchers will able to know, okay, maybe the different countries have different findings, and this is why, or these studies have this findings, or maybe this is a different settings. So overall your paper should be the components I mentioned, all these components. If you focus, then your paper will be very nice paper, and the readers will pay attention. And also please follow the journal guidelines always, I suggest, because sometimes I saw that if the paper is rejected from one journal, the authors usually just submit to another journal without putting any effort to change, which is actually undermining the respect to the other journals as well. So you have to a little bit change and follow the guidelines, and then try to submit according to that. So that's why I recommend in the beginning to try to make your paper as a universal structure paper. Means don't write too much. For example, if your abstract is 250 words, some journal will ask you abstract of 200 words. Now you have to cut your abstract, right? It will take another extra time. So why not in the beginning, when you just make your abstract of 150 words, or maybe maximum 200 words, right? So then maybe most of the journals, because they keep 200 or 250. If the journal is asking 250, you still have 200, right? So you don't have to change much. And if the journal is asking 200, then you already have 200. So it's something like that. And also for the paper structure, that's why I recommend to keep in the 3,000 words to 3,500 words, is because some journal will ask you 4,000 words. Some journal will ask you 4,500 words, but some journal will ask you 3,000 words only. So imagine if you have 4,000 words and the journal is asking you 3,500 words, then you have to cut 500. And some people do is they just cut the paragraph, but it's not the way, because you plan like a story. So you cannot cut one story part from the paper directly. So you have to understand carefully. That's why I recommend in the beginning that whenever you do something, you do carefully and prepare your paper, and be a smart way. Like you make in the first time comprehensive when you're writing the paper, because most of journal will have this standard structure, right? And then your journal paper fit into the different journals and without changing much. And if you're using the proper software for the references, then it will also help you. For example, if your paper is rejected from one journal, then you can able to submit to another journal without doing much extra changes, just few changes like that.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Usman. I think we come to the end of our session, and I would like to say thanks again to Professor Usman for your interesting lecture and the topics. And in the future, we can make a collaboration in this same section or the other opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Luan. Thank you, everyone. And I hope that to receive some papers coming from this 164 participants, right?
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Feel like.
Assalamualaikum, Professor Usman.
Waalaikumsalam.
Let's give once a big round of applause for our speaker. Hopefully, this lecture can be beneficial for everybody. But wait, I will share the certificate Usman link. Please, sorry. It is the link for your certificate Usman. Please click this link and please write your email address correctly, the Is certificate will be sent to your email address, and the link is active for only 60 minutes after this virtual lecture is over. And thank you for your kind attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you all. I think it is enough. I will close this session. Thank you for your kind attention, kind participation. See you next time.
Thank you, sir.